thing.
Yeah.
We can hear you now, Dr. Roberts, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a challenge to get on, and that's even with good tech help.
You just never know with technology. I'm glad you could join us today. And so just want to give a disclaimer out before we get started. This meeting is being recorded. Becca has actually started the recording for us. If you are a member, you need to have your camera on. I will turn my camera on for this little intro. You need to have your camera on and mute and unmute your mic when you're asked to speak, especially for roll call and approval of minutes. If you are not a member, please make sure your video is off and you are on mute. And Kathy Anderson is our gifted and talented consultant. Kathy and I are helping to facilitate the meeting. Before we pass it on to Dr. Roberts, Kathy, do you have anything to say for us?
No, I don't think so, Joe. I don't know. Can people see the agenda?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah.
So I guess the last thing we need to mention is that our interim commissioner, Kevin Brown, came on earlier just before the meeting, and he sends his regards. He's not able to be with us at the beginning of the meeting, but he is going to try to pop back in later, as well as Greta Hilton. They are both in meetings today, and Kevin is dealing a lot with our current situation around high school athletics, which many of you, I think, are aware of. So we just want to thank everyone for being here today. And if you're a member, keep your camera on and prepare for audio. And Dr. Roberts is going to start the meeting for us. Thank you, Dr. Roberts.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm glad to see everyone. I do have a question. I don't usually do Teams. Is there a way to see everybody? I know how to do it on Zoom. Can you do that on Teams? I can see 3 people.
Right. So in order to see people, they have to turn on their camera. And
Dr. Roberts, if you click on the 3 buttons, it's going to give you a menu. And on that menu, it'll let you choose from which view you would like. If you select gallery, that will display the photos or the pictures of people who do have their cameras on. If they don't have their cameras on, you'll see their name or their photo that's linked to their account.
I don't see gallery as an option on mine. Show device settings, show meeting details, enter full screen, show background effects and keypad. And that's it.
What device are you on?
I'm on a laptop, a Mac.
Oh, a Mac. Okay, I'm not sure about how Mac will display.
Okay, that'll be fine. I just kind of wanted to see everyone who was here.
Oh, I apologize.
No.
Well, right now, Dr. Roberts, if it makes you feel any better, I only see 3 people too. So I'm wondering if the other people don't have their camera turned on or don't have a camera to turn on.
I see Joe.
Right. I see Joe and Emily and you.
And I see Joe, Emily, and you.
Right. So I think that's those are the only people that have their camera turned on.
Okay.
And
I don't mean to delay the meeting over this.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. I think we need for people to turn on their camera though, if they have a camera available.
And Dr. Roberts, I think I learned something new in this virtual environment each meeting. So it's always nice to try some new things in here to help us all.
Well, I will assure you that I learn things with technology all the time and need lots of help in order to stay on top of it. So thank you. Now, the purpose of the Advisory Council is always printed on the top of our agenda, and I shall read it. The State Advisory Council for Gifted and Talented Education is hereby created for the purpose of advising both the Department of Education and Board of Education on issues relating to the provision of educational services for gifted and talented students in the Commonwealth. And I think it's really important for us to keep the purpose front and center in our discussions. And one of the things that we had talked to the interim commissioner about at our last meeting was trying to have an opportunity to go in front of the state board to advise them on gifted. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to do that. So let's have roll call. Will you do that, Kathy?
I'd be glad to, Dr. Roberts. Carla Pleasant emailed and said she would not be able to join. This is one of the first days of school for them. Joe, are you here? I think I saw you.
I'm here.
All right.
See him big on the screen.
Yeah, that's right. And Lindsay
about that.
Burton, no, you're fine. Lindsay Burton said that she also emailed Dr. Roberts and said she wouldn't be attending. This was their first day of school, and being a kindergarten teacher, it's very important to be there for the first day of school. Dr. Miller, are you here today? Okay, I didn't hear from Dr. Miller, I don't think. I see Emily. Emily's here. And Dr. Roberts, I see you're here. Catherine Booth, are you here today?
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay. All right.
Can you hear me?
I can. Do you have a camera?
I didn't get it on the phone. I had to go to my computer.
Okay, so that's
yeah.
Miss Mackey. Okay.
I was
Good.
saving my computer to read the document, but anyway. Okay.
Gotcha. I understand. Thanks for joining, Miss Mackey. Is Catherine Booth here today? Okay. Lisa Sisk.
I can just see myself, so I can't see you. Is that okay?
I don't know, Miss Mackey. That's a good question.
That's okay. Can you see me though?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Lynette Baldwin.
Oh, here it is. Oh, here they are.
Okay. So we're missing some people, Dr. Roberts, and I don't think I've heard from some of these people. But anyway, we can move forward, and I'll just put these people in an attendance that are here or not here, and maybe they'll come in a little bit later.
And I think someone could be having a challenge getting on.
There you are. Definitely.
Okay.
The next point on the agenda is to review the minutes from our last meeting. You all have a copy of those. Have you read them, or do we need a few minutes to review?
I think it's pretty good. I read them. If I can remember.
Did anyone have any suggestions?
Okay. I had one. Has the resource page been updated?
Diane, I'm not sure.
Okay. All
that
right.
you're asking.
That's fine.
I think she's talking about the gifted and talented visual and performing arts, those resources. Is that what you're talking about, Miss? Yes, we'll get to that later on the agenda.
Okay, that's good.
If there are no suggestions, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I approve.
A second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those who favor approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
or
Aye.
hold up something.
Wave.
Yeah, wave.
Wait, yeah, that's good.
And all those who oppose, like sign. The minutes stand approved as read. I see Lynette's next on the agenda, and the truth of the matter, I talked with her last night. She was planning to be here. I bet she is stuck on the technology part of it. Why don't we skip and see if she doesn't come back?
Okay.
If she doesn't come in, and then we'll go back to that point. So that takes us to you, Kathy, with frequently asked questions that have been asked during this COVID-19 time that seems to go on and on.
Right. All right. Let me bring that up so everybody can see that. We've had several different additions to that over.
And Kathy, while you're bringing that up, I just want to remind folks to make sure you are on mute while Kathy's presenting. And notice there is a raise your hand icon in your toolbar. And so if there are questions or if you need to get our attention, you can just click on that raise your hand, and Kathy and I will be looking to make sure and address that if you have a question. So thanks.
Thank you.
You're ready, Kathy?
Right. Just about. I'm trying to find the latest and greatest version. I thought I had it pulled up, but I didn't. But I think I've got it here. So I just wanted to give a little background on this. So when I started back with Gifted in August, I asked could we meet with some of the gifted and talented cadre leaders across the state. We have several cadres that meet in our different regions, and each of these are facilitated by usually a GT coordinator or a GT teacher in the region. And so we've got about 9 different cadre leaders across the state. And as we met, I asked them to the first time we met, we meet again tomorrow, I asked them to bring, to reach out to their contacts in their region and bring questions that people were asking them to our kind of our virtual roundtable. So let me share this with you. Okay. Can everybody see the document on the screen? It might take a minute
Yes,
to load.
Kathy, we can see it.
Okay. So several of the questions have been answered in guidance, either while we've been having the document approved, we've added a couple, or some of them are still in place from how we've answered them. So here are some of the questions that were asked, and as we go through them, you might be thinking to yourself, well, maybe that needs a little bit more explanation, or, I think we have some other questions we might add. So feedback from you would be greatly appreciated. So I'm just going to share with you some of the questions and responses. The first questions have been answered in guidance. It's already been put forward by the department. One of the questions was, how do districts identify and serve visually performing arts VPA students safely due to COVID-19 concerns? And so this has already been answered in a guidance document called Considerations for Reopening Schools, Exceptional Learners in Preschool. And that's on page 4. And there's the link is in blue there. Another question has been, how do districts use and safely reuse testing materials? And that answer is again in Considerations for Reopening Schools, Exceptional Learners in Preschools. That's on page 10. Number 3, how do districts safely pull out students and or use acceleration for services? Again, that was answered in Consideration for Reopening Schools, Exceptional Learners in Preschool, page 4. How do districts sanitize materials and rooms? That's in kind of our flagship document. That's what we call it. Guidance on Safety Expectations and Best Practices for Kentucky Schools. That's on pages 18 through 24. How do gifted and talented GT staff ensure students are participating in gifted services? And the answer for that is found on Considerations for Reopening Schools, Daily Participation, and Non-Traditional Instruction, page 3. And then finally in this section, question 6, could a district who is using remote instruction schedule students to come in for an in-person screening and or testing? And the answer for that just came out last week in a document called Consideration for Reopening Schools, Welcoming Students for Orientation and Targeted Services, pages 4 through 6. So I'll just stop a minute. I know that was quite a bit to kind of take in right there. And does anybody have anything they want to add to that? Questions, comments, anything like that?
Kathy, what is the answer to the last one that you said came out last week?
So yes, districts can schedule times for students to come in. As they think about scheduling students for coming in, of course, they've got to think about, you know, different types of things. That would be transportation. And so if schools want to, they can bus students in for screening and testing. Or if they're not able to do that, they can let, you know, districts know that they'll be, you know, reaching out to them once they come back to in-person schools. And they can also be collecting other data if they want to, if they're not able to assess. So that's part of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's part of that that response there. All right. Anybody else have any questions? That was a good question, Dr. Roberts. And that's a question that I've been asked quite a bit this past month. And I had a response there, but then when the guidance came out, we decided to move forward with kind of the all state guidance there rather than it being just on the FAQ document.
Kathy, Claude had a question. Is this document already posted and where?
No, so it's moving up the leadership chain in my office and is being reviewed by them and probably should be forthcoming very soon, I feel.
Thank you.
All right, so the next questions have to do with assessment and screening. The first question says, can a district use an online platform for testing? And so the answer is this is a district decision. Should a district choose to use an online platform, here are some items to consider. Validity: for a test to be valid, district staff or the online platform must have a proctor. Equity: for there to be equity, all students must have reliable network service and the hardware being used must be in good working condition. Communication: districts should communicate about the purpose of the testing and why validity is important, and also confidentiality. Districts should ensure that assessment screening materials, results of assessments, and other collected evidence are administered with the security and privacy required by the Federal Education Privacy Act, FERPA. So I had some other assessment questions, but as you can see, a lot of those were answered up in already in guidance by the department. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or additions they think need to be added about this particular question? Emily, do you have something? No. And if you think of things later on, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm taking notes. I don't have questions yet.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And I know that you're in this position where you're doing assessment and screening. So if you've got any questions about that, just feel free to ask them at any time. And I can also send this document for you guys to look at if you'd like later on after our meeting or when I get a chance here, try to send that to you guys.
It'd be great.
And Kathy, just remember, we also have a Google Drive location for this group. We can load that into also.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good to know. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right. So then we had questions about services. And the first question is, due to special circumstances during the pandemic, how much time is enough for services? And this is a district decision. The gifted regulation doesn't mandate a frequency and duration of service time like it does for the IEP or for special education. However, services must meet the needs and interests and abilities of students in grades K through 12. And here are some things to consider. What are the goals of the service? What are the needs of the student receiving services? And then there's 3 bullets underneath that. Are they a twice exceptional student with additional specific needs that must be considered? Can the student be served in a group, or should the service be offered one-on-one? And what is the schedule of the person responsible for providing the services? So these are all some things that staff or districts might want to consider when they're thinking about services, especially during COVID-19. The second question was, how will virtual learning students have their needs met through their Gifted Student Service Plan, GSSP? Again, this is a district decision, but it's important to remember services must still be offered. The Gifted and Talented Regulation, I give a link to that there, lists several service delivery options. Depending on the district resources, a variety of these could be offered, such as acceleration, differentiation within the regular classroom setting, enrichment, curriculum compacting, collaboration, and consultation. And of course, these aren't all the services that are listed in the Gifted Regulation. These are just a few examples. Number 3, did somebody have something they wanted to say?
I just wanted to make sure you were aware of a question in the chat, Kathy, from Claude.
Oh, I don't have
says,
that. I can't see that.
how does this affect twice exceptional?
Which part, Claude?
And I think he may be just referring to the overall assessment.
Overall assessment. Like the assessment for identification?
Claude, can you speak to that one? Or if you type in the chat, I will speak for you.
While he's typing that up. So,
in terms of assessment and equity.
Okay, Joe, I've unmuted. I'm sitting here. I'm also watching with my wife, who is working with some of these areas as well. And the question was actually hers. I'm gonna let her speak to exactly what she's asking.
All right,
Okay.
thanks,
In terms
Claude.
of equity, I realize that that online platform, we know we're going to eventually move to that completely. But in terms of twice exceptional and accommodations, has that been factored into how this is going to look? I know it's going to be at the district level. It's a district decision, but will there be guidance from the state to ensure that these things are in play?
So that's a really good question. That's something that I get asked oftentimes, Ms. Christian. Thank you for answering that. So if a student has an IEP, the district usually has an administration manual. And so they need to refer back to that manual for how to administer those accommodations. And of course, you wouldn't offer everything in the kitchen sink. You'd have to look specifically at the student's IEP to see if they get time and a half, or if they, get to have, questions read to them, or paraphrasing, that type of thing. But they should be offered the accommodations that are in their IEP. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm also concerned about when they choose the platform, because there are some platforms that may work better than others. So when they make that decision, I think in the RFP process, even at the beginning, that needs to be a consideration.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Right now, I don't know of very many remote learning platforms. I know the COGAT, or the Cognitive Assessment for Testing, is going to be offering kind of a remote platform that has that proctor feature factored into it. But I don't know of very many other platforms that offer that. And so I feel like most people are probably going to have to schedule appointments for students to come in for them to do a paper pencil assessment. That's my guess right now. And so if they're taking that paper pencil assessment, then they need to take those accommodations into play. But that's a really good question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kathy,
feel free to ask any other questions. Yes,
thanks.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, that is a good question. That is a good question. And feel free to do the raise hand, or let us know if you do have a question. Miss Mackey has a question and would like to speak. And just remind Miss Mackey to come off of mute, and then you can ask Kathy the question. And I think she's still on mute. because I see her speaking. So
Am I? I'm not.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
I
we
was
can hear
wondering
you.
if anyone had tried this new assessment format and how did it work? What were the results? I guess that's what I was. Is there had enough time to see if it?
I might have a better update for you the next time we meet in November, Miss Mackey. We're just now many schools starting back, and I know like Marshall County has an online platform, and they may be trying to use that. They use the COGAT, and I know that Toddy Adams, who is the GT coordinator there in Marshall County, has reached out to her COGAT representative. So I'll probably know more the next time we meet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's a good question. I'd like to know as well.
Okay.
Good question. Are there any other questions before I go on with the document? Okay, if not, I'll move forward and just feel free to ask as many questions as you like. This is good feedback. All right, so I think I am down to number 3 there. How did GT staff communicate that gifted services are not extra work? All right, so with many school districts during the pandemic using remote learning, concerns may arise regarding GT services being extra work. GT staff must communicate that GT services must be offered due to regulation. Professional learning opportunities, collaboration, and consultation may be a time to discuss this topic. Some districts use the KSBA Curriculum and Instruction Chapter 8 Policy 132, which states, students in the GT program shall not be required to make up missing work while being provided services through the district gifted program. And of course, this would be a district decision, but we did try to offer some resources here to help answer this question. This is a question that comes up not only during COVID-19 times, but I have a feeling it may come up even more often now with remote learning. The last question here is number 4. How can service needs of visual and performing arts, VPA, students be met if the district is not offering opportunities such as chorus, or the district has assigned VPA teachers to other classes during COVID-19? And so again, this is going to be a district decision, but services could be offered through other options such as seminars, consortiums, independent study, mentoring, or distance learning. So any thoughts or questions that are bubbling to the top for you guys?
Kathy, I'm thinking that you probably are getting more questions than ever these days. Is that the case?
Yes, and most of them are in these main buckets: assessment and services. Yes. I've had a few questions that just have to do with some data entry and our data standards. I point them towards that we've updated. But most of them revolve around these 2 important questions: services and assessment. How are we going to do it? And then we had some other kind of more specific questions, and I'm going to be talking with the Gifted Cadre, which you're a part of, tomorrow, to see who might be interested in doing some webinars, recording some webinars that feature, what people are doing to offer services. Some of, what are some best practices for offering, virtual learning, that type of thing. I know that Cage is going to be touching on that as well on Saturday. So just a plug out there for Cage, that they'll be addressing, some best practices about how to engage students in virtual learning on Saturday.
Claude has a question, Kathy. I was just letting you know.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this one is actually more of a suggestion than a question as you're looking at the visual performing arts areas. It's kind of ends up being in our hands as parts of KDE. One of the things that may be advantageous is to actually reach out and find out what some of the schools are doing, because there are some schools that are finding very effective ways to address that without having to have 300 kids show up at the same time. Seeing as, for example, the entire marching season is gone, most marching bands are not stopping. They're finding alternative ways to do that. And you have, for example, Fayette County and SCAPA, their entire performing arts school. They're finding ways to continue instruction without the face-to-face aspect. And while everyone's situation may be a little bit different, having them reach out to one another and pointing folks in the right direction may help to alleviate some of the frustration and concern over how to provide those services.
Thank you, Claude. Carla Pleasant, who is the director for SCAPA, usually
Yes.
attends our meetings, and I'm sure she would have had a lot to say about BPA. She's usually is very vocal, but as I said,
I'm sure. I know Carla.
but that is a really good idea, and I appreciate that suggestion.
Yeah,
Because
I'm sure she would've been
looking to
upset.
other districts that are having some success is always a good idea. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure
Thank
she
you
would
for
have been
that.
upset with me if we hadn't said something for that very reason. Because there are ways to get it accomplished.
That's right. That's right. When we last met, many people hadn't come up with any ideas and that type of thing. And I do know that some people are having like face masks that have an opening there for the instrument, which is a unusual idea. Of course, they've already told people they probably need to put a mute on the end of the horn if they've got one, or if it's feasible. Can't mute a flute, but that kind of thing. But those are good ideas, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. Thank you. Anybody else with suggestions or comments?
Orangeburg's kind of can you hear me?
Yes.
Orangeburg's kind of a bluegrass center, and I know there's a Randy Lanham. Now, this is the private thing, but he told me that it was available to anybody. He has virtual lessons for fiddle online, and I don't know exactly how you can do it, but I was inquiring for my grandchildren, and that might be something else. Of course, you have to have the instrument, but then this one person told me I could go to the library and rent it. So, I'm just throwing out things there. So, and I haven't actually accessed his virtual lessons, but I think it sounds interesting and sounds like it might be very good, because he's not able to meet with his students privately.
Right.
Has anyone ever heard of him, Randy Lanham, bluegrass?
I have not, but I have heard of taking virtual lessons.
Okay.
That's a good suggestion, Ms. Mackey. Thank you.
Lynette has a question also. Go ahead, Lynette.
Kathy, could you go back to question number 3 on your slide and tell me the KFCA information again?
It's right there, Lynette, and I'm going to send this out to you guys. It's right here.
Okay,
Can you see that?
I can see until it gets to chapter 8, policy
132.
Policy 132.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome. I have to admit, I stole that off of Sarah Coomer's website. She helped me with that.
Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have anything that they want to say? Okay. Well, thank you for letting me share that with you guys, and I'll send this in an email to you guys here in just a second.
And we'll appreciate that. Thank you, Kathy.
You're so welcome.
Is there anything else you want to share right now, Kathy?
No, ma'am, not right now.
Then let me give Lynette Baldwin an opportunity to give the update for the Kentucky Association for Gifted Education.
Okay. Cage has been working through the summer on various projects. We have 2 calendar events that are happening here very quickly. One is Saturday with our update in gifted education. We have decided this year to do all of our events as a virtual event. so that no one has to worry about wearing a mask or social distancing. Our gifted update is for those folks who are new to gifted education or would like to have an update on what is taking place in gifted ed in Kentucky and the nation. So we have a full day starting at 9 o'clock and going to about 1:30. Julia is going to moderate. We have different issues to be considered. Kathy is going to help us start the day by giving us an update from KDE. We're going to have a panel on COVID-19 considerations for best practices. And this is also something we have online. If folks would like to get a peek at it online on our, it's on our resources page, I believe. Jimmy Korn from Odyssey of the Mind is going to be there and will give us information about what's happening with Odyssey of the Mind this year. I'm sure most people know about Odyssey of the Mind, but if you do not, it's an excellent service for gifted kids. Then there will be an interview with Dr. Jonathan Plucker. Dr. Plucker is currently the president of NAGC, and he's an endowed professor at Johns Hopkins University. By having a virtual event, we're able to pull in more folks than just Kentucky people. So it's great to have Dr. Plucker with us. If you're not acquainted with his work, he works, the thing I think about him with is, there are two things, creativity and the excellence gap. He's been in Kentucky many times and talked to our folks. He's very interesting to listen to with that. We'll take a short lunch break, and then Julia will talk about inequities in advanced coursework, what's driving them and what leaders can do, and it's a report from the Education Trust. Online learning is something that we're all very much concerned with now, and Sam Northern from Simpson County Schools will be taking time to tell us what makes online learning effective. And then I think the most popular part of the event is when we have the students from the Gatton Academy come on. And we will have a panel of Academy students. Julia will be the moderator, and they will talk about their experiences as gifted students, not only at the Academy, but in public schools as well. And I think you'll find their information very enlightening, told as only kids can tell it. So that's our date that we have planned. We have, if we were in our room at Western, as we usually are, we have an overflow crowd. We're at least to 150. And we have people coming from, I think we even have one registered from Australia. I'm not sure. But they're coming from all over the place, and we're delighted to have everyone with us. So if you haven't registered and you would like to be a part of us, please do join us on Saturday. You can register by going online at Cage, and it's very easy to register there, and Gail will take care of sending you the link to join us, and it's free. That's what makes it even better. The other calendar event we have this fall is September the 15th. We have our Cage Fall Workshop. We are pleased to present April Wells. She is the coordinator in Illinois School District U46, which is the second largest school district in Illinois. Excuse me. She facilitated the redesign of the district's gifted program in 2012 and 13. And she's also an author of the book, Achieving Equity in Gifted Programming, Dismantling Barriers and Tapping Potential. And one of the things Cage likes to do is try to dismantle barriers and promote awareness of the barriers so that people within their districts can do what they can to establish policies that get beyond the barriers. April's session is titled The Equity Imperative in Gifted Education, Refocused and Ready for the Shift. And I like her first sentence in her description. She said participants will be guided through practices to move the field from the rest stop of courageous conversations to a pathway that outlines courageous actions aimed at meeting the needs of gifted learners from underserved populations. In other words, we're to stop talking and get to moving in action on what to do with it. So she will be looking at underrepresented populations and looking at policies that can be used to move beyond just the talk, and looking at what to look for in the classroom as well. So those are our two calendar events that are happening really soon. We are looking now at platforms for our annual conference in February, where we will have 2 days of virtual online presentations with speakers, we hope, from not only Kentucky, but across the country as well. Other things that CAGE has been doing this summer, I've talked a little bit, I think the last time, we have a resources page where we have tried to list as many resources as we could find that could be used to, to complement your virtual services. They're all ages, all types, all different kinds of sessions. I would recommend that you look into it and use some of them to help complement what you're doing. If you have someone who is still a little shaky about designing instruction for virtual learning, or how to convert regular classroom instruction to virtual learning, we have an article there from Lisa Van Gimrit, who is known as the Gifted Guru. And she has 6 steps to prepare for blended learning. And it spells out the process in a methodical and comprehensive way to give people some ideas and a starting point for switching lessons. And sometimes some people need that to really get them started on it. Another resource that we have found that offers a lot of help is bluegrass.edu. This is Allison Bemis from Bowling Green, and they offer videos and photos and podcasts and tips on teaching virtually and more. So it's a really good source. And then there is a video from Dr. Ed Amon. If you need a source on managing mental health issues children and parents are having during or experiencing during the COVID-19, he has a 10-minute podcast that would be very interesting to listen to, and he offers some suggestions. Those are all found on the CAGE webpage, and we welcome you to explore it and see what all that you can find there that will help you. We invite you to attend our events, and if you're not a member of CAGE, please join CAGE and help us here. Julia, thank you. Any questions?
Lynette, we do have a question from Joe Percival, and he was wondering about the virtual conference agenda, if that was finalized yet. And his point was, with O&M presenting, he didn't know if you wanted Future City to present information, because they would love that platform if there's ever an option, and their conference is virtual as well.
Our agenda for Saturday is pretty much set in stone at this moment, but I would love to have Joe at the annual conference in February and invite him as soon as we get the platform established and know how we're going to be collecting data for that. I would love to have Joe by himself as a presenter at CAGE.
Joe, would you like to speak to that or respond?
There, am I muted now? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we can definitely talk about it. The only I guess detriment to doing it in February is our competition is in January, and so this year it's actually been pushed back and it's going to be in February. And so I mean, it's always good to get it on people's radar, but they wouldn't be able to compete that year. So basically, we would be getting it on their radar to compete for 21-22. And so that's just why I was thinking about the fall, because the fall is like they would be getting revved up to compete like now. So, but it's fine. I mean, maybe if it's on your radar, maybe for next fall or something. I just would always love the opportunity to be in front of people and put it in the teachers' hands. I'm going to post it on the UK listservs as well to make sure that people know about it for folks that way as well. So, just trying to get the program in people's hands.
Joe, why
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
you also send me information? I'll post it on the CAGE webpage
Okay,
and the CAGE Facebook.
will do.
Joe, why
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
you do a little video about it? And that could be also posted on the CAGE website.
Okay, yeah, we
Right.
can do that too.
And
Yeah.
we'd be happy to do that through the Center for Gifted Studies. That's the kind of thing we are happy to get out.
Yeah.
You could also write a piece for the CAGE newsletter.
Okay. Yeah, we have tons of Warren County is actually probably one of our aside from locally with us in Oldham County, Warren is probably where we get it's probably one of the most dense counties that we have for schools that participate. So we have like Natcher Elementary and South Warren Middle School, and we have several schools that come from Bowling Green that participate. So yeah, I can definitely do all those things. Just whatever we need to do to get it in teachers' hands.
And maybe next year we can get it on the gifted update agenda.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be
Help us
awesome.
remember to do that.
Yeah, we're virtual this year too. So as schools and teachers are looking for ways to give some enrichment to their middle school and 4th and 5th graders, because we have the elementary division as well. So for schools that have anywhere from 4th to 8th grade, it's a really good opportunity for them to offer some enrichment to kids who are going to be at home. We've gone virtual, so they also have the opportunity. They don't even have to be together to compete. So the way that we've set it up this year, the kids can compete as part of a team, and they don't even have to be in the same location to do that. So we've got a lot of different changes that we made this year so the kids can do that. So
that's great. Lynette, does that conclude your report?
Yes, it does, Julia.
Okay, thank you so much. Kathy, let's look at the state report card, and especially with the primary talent pool being considered data that's provided there.
Okay, give me just a second to bring up my presentation here.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. I think I may have done the wrong screen though again, Joe. Let me try that again. Sorry about that. One of these days I'll get this down.
I was just going to remind you to put it in presentation mode, slide view.
Yes, that's always helpful. It's trying.
Looks good.
Okay. All right. So rather than try to go to the website, because sometimes that can be kind of iffy, I try to take some screenshots, and I can send this PowerPoint to you guys to help guide you through how to get to the school report card and then the primary talent pool data. All right, so here is the click path. So what you need to do is you need to go to the KDE main landing page, and I've given you the link to that there. And then once you're on the main landing page, you scroll down to the school report card, and I've given you a link to that there. And then once you're on the school report card, you'll see several different options there. You'll see an overview, you'll see academic performance, and so on. And then advanced coursework, which has several different things underneath of it, and gifted and talented and career and technical education underneath this heading called educational opportunity. Okay. All right, so this is the main landing page you'll see when you click on school report card. And you can either look at the state data by clicking here where it says explore statewide education data, and there's like a little arrow there. Or you can type in the name of a school district here. Like I could put in Shelby County, or I could do, Paducah Independent. And it'll come up with several different options, and then you click on the option that you want. And you can either do district-wide data, or once you get into the website, you can drill down to a school if you want to. So these are the options that will come up that you can see. And the option that we're going to look at today is educational opportunity. Okay. And on the sidebar, as you go through the different subjects, this little sidebar will always be on the side so that you can always click back to that rather than have to click the back arrow on your web browser. All right, so I clicked on advanced, I think it was advanced. No, this is just student membership, because I kind of wanted you to see that you can see all of, the different students desegregated by population here. And this is, it only goes for 2018, 2019. They haven't published 1920 yet, or of course they haven't published 2021, but that should be coming out pretty soon, I imagine. And so I clicked on total student enrollment, or just student. Let me go back here, if I can go back. I don't know if I can show you that or not. Maybe not. But you can just look at the overview, which is here, and it will give you an overview of all the students. So that's what we're looking at here, is student membership. And they have it desegregated by different types of membership. There's also total membership, which gives you the number of students, whether, without them having exited school or whatever, that going to another school or something like that. But this is just membership, unduplicated membership here. And so you can see all the grades here, and it's desegregated by, different types of populations. We've got male, female, African American, Hispanic, 2 or more races, all the different ethnicities here. And then you can scroll across the bottom and push it further, because right now all you can see is up to grade 8. If you want to see that the other grade, then you scroll over. So that's my next slide here. So these are grades 4 through 12 here, and you can even see 14 if you want to. And then it gives you the membership totals at the bottom for all of the different grade levels across the state. This is state data. Then I thought it might be interesting, you might like to look at the AP course participation. So here is that information. And as we're looking at equity, I think it's important to note that we had African American students, we had 2,920 students, and then those that completed it were 2,724. And if you look back here at our African American participation, let's say that we're looking at AP, which usually, is somewhere between 9, 10, 11, 12th grades. Usually 11th and 12th grades is when people take AP coursework. You can see that in African American students, we had just in grades 11 and 12, we had about 10,000 students. And so if you're a math whiz, which I am not, and you think about 3,000 out of 10,000 students, I don't know, what grades these are here, you can do the math there. But it kind of helps you kind of do some percentages. And then you can look at Hispanic students too, 2167. And you go back here and you can look and see, how many Hispanic students do we have in grades, 9 through 12 or 10 through 12, however you want to do that. And then do a percentage that way too, if you want to. All right. Then you can also go back and look at gifted and talented data. And you can look at it by grade here. Up at the top, you'll see all students. And you can either do kindergarten, first grade, second grade. You can parse out that information by clicking on the top here. And this gives you, your female students, your male students, your different ethnicities, and then your other underrepresented population, your gap groups down at the bottom here. So all students in 2018, 2019, K through 12, we had 94,644. All right. Then you can also look at by category. And so Dr. Julia kind of specifically asked for primary talent pool. And so during this time, out of the 94,644, we had 26,074 students. And you can see the other records here.
Kathy, may I ask
Yes.
a question?
Sure.
So when anyone is reporting the number of gifted students in Kentucky, that would include primary talent pool?
Yes, ma'am. They have to complete a record for primary talent pool, which is separate from grades 4 through 12. But the way the data is reported right now is that we put all of that data together. And so there's 9,644, records right now are students. And then out of those 94,644, 26,074 are primary talent pool. Does that make sense?
I understand it, but that seems to me to present a misleading number for the number of identified gifted students when we encourage schools to have 25% selected for the primary talent pool.
Right. And so I have brought this forward to my leadership, and it's too late to do anything about it for this year, I think, but it's something that we will be discussing, I hope, for next year. Because like you said, it does give some, maybe not the best data for people to make some decisions about. And I even went back, Dr. Julia, because I was kind of curious to see what percentage 26,074 would be. And when you look at the information that was given here, kindergarten grades 1 through 3, and you total that up, it comes to about 200,000 students. And when you divide, 26 by 200,000, it gives you about 13%. So I think that there needs to be some more education, maybe about how to look at that data. And that's something that I'm hoping to do in my beginning of the year training this year, is to talk about looking at data and how you parse out that data to get the numbers that you really need.
Kathy?
Yes.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Is this looking at primary talent pool students in the categories, or is this just a general total for primary talent pool?
Infinite Campus doesn't do a category for primary talent pool. It only does primary talent pool.
Okay.
There was a request for that on the summative evaluation. That would be something that would have to be addressed probably, early January if we wanted to do any changes like that and ask Infinite Campus to do something like that. It'd have to come before data governance as well, because that would take a lot of coding to do that, to write that code to parse all that out. But hope that answered your question. That's a good question. All right.
So we really don't know if we're getting 5% of each of the categories within that 25% that should be identified.
Right. That's right. And
so we could be heavy in probably academic.
That's true.
Would be my guess.
That's true. And that's something I'm hoping to talk about.
We do not know how many twice exceptional children are being served in the primary talent pool this way.
Right. I don't think, yes, that's true. That's true. I don't know. Let me see if I can look at this. So also, I know y'all don't have access to Infinite Campus. Many of you don't. But some of you do. And there is a report that's called I think it's called the QA Gifted and Talented Report. And so this report, the same way, you can look at the data. The data is a little bit different because it's maybe have been pulled at a different time. But you can look at some information here, which is interesting to look at as well, I think, and something that I'm hoping to go over in the beginning of the year training, looking at data. And so for the school year, there was about 700,000 students. Out of those 700,000, the about 95,000 were gifted, okay? And you can look at the different ethnicities here and also the gap groups down at the bottom. And then it also gives a comparison of, you know, of your GT population and your overall population here. And the rule of thumb, I think, from some of the experts in looking at proportionality is it should be 80% of the total population. So 80% of, you know, 10.61 would be about 8 something probably. As you can see, we're at 5.11, so we're quite a ways from 8%. So we have some work to do, and I'm hoping we can talk about that, you know, later on when we're looking at the article about how to encourage people to use special considerations and local norms and to look at their data, you know. As you can see, you drop down and you look at Hispanic, kind of the same thing here, 3.82 to 7.22. You know, this is not 80%. Then you look at white, we've got 84% as a, you know, compared to 75% there. So it kind of, this, I'm hoping we'll be looking at this at our beginning of the year training, and I can help people look at their data. This has 3 pages in this report. The next report, whoops, I got the thing out of order there. The next page of the report, it breaks it down by your categories here. And as you can see, primary talent pool is way over here on the right. So 26,000 of our 95,000 students are in primary talent pool. So like Dr. Julia was saying, we don't have as many identified, formally identified because of the way this is broken out, which is important for people to understand that. And it's something I will be pointing out in training. And then again, you can look at, you know, primary talent pool. So we've got about 4,900, 5,000 African-American students are in gifted, but 1,800 of those are primary talent pool. Again, you can look down here as Hispanic students. We have, you know, 1223 are in primary talent pool. I don't know what this is, 3664. That seems like that number is, maybe I'm not looking at that number correctly. Okay, so we have this many students in gifted and 1,200 are in primary talent pool. So that's almost half. So it's just kind of interesting data to look at, you know. Then you can look at the arts. It has a 3rd page we can look at. So this disaggregates the information by the different category counts by grade, K through 12, so that you can see how many students are in GI. And I can't see that because mine's pinned down there at the bottom. But it breaks it down for you by looking at this information by grade level. So it's a really good report. It could be better, I think, if we disaggregate the primary talent pool information, perhaps, so that people can really look at their, you know, that as a separate entity as opposed to, you know, the other grades 4 through 12, but just something to think about. Any questions?
I think it would be really important to do that, and you do too, Kathy. I think that when you give the total number and include primary talent pool, it gives an inflated view of how well districts are identifying, and you really don't identify for the primary talent pool you select. And so it's kind of mixing 2 categories in a way that isn't very, it doesn't present a very good picture of what's there. I think someone in the legislature looking at the number of students served and including primary talent pool would have a different impression of what the district's doing than is really happening.
Right, right. And it looks like there may be some problems with the data here in 3rd grade. We shouldn't be having any students that are in these categories here. We don't formally identify till 4th grade, so that tells me that we've got some data out there that needs to be corrected. But you're right, Dr. Julia, that's true. And so that's something that we'll be working on for next year. So Claude, did you have a question? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Me again. Two things. First, do we know at the school level, with the CSIPs, we know that there are expectations and goals. Is there a built-in allotment for improvement for identifying GT kids in general in the CSIP? And how do we make sure that that happens? And secondly, if we disaggregate this data and we look at the number of African-American kids in AP classes across the state, I would love to see how many of those are African-American males. My gut tells me it's extremely low.
Well, to the first part of your question there, so every year annually, districts have to do a program evaluation.
Right.
And part of that program evaluation is looking at their data and their progress and their identification. There's several different parts of that program evaluation. And that part is for that to be part of their CDIP and CSIP, is that they take all that data that they've looked at, so they bring that and they discuss that information as part of their CDIP and CSIP.
Okay.
That's something that I monitor for when I go out to monitor. The second part of that would be kind of more Dr. Damian Sweeney's side there, and I'm not sure if in the school report card, I think I showed you all that I could see in that section of the report card, but
Okay.
you could go and look a little bit more. I'm not as familiar with that part of the report card, and there may be an Infinite Campus report that gives you that kind of information. You could ask Dr. Sweeney about that.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Those are really good questions, and I'm glad that you're bringing them up. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right. I'll stop sharing my screen then.
Well, data are certainly important for us in presenting a picture of what gifted is all about, what it currently is in Kentucky, and perhaps setting goals for what it could be in terms of identification.
Right.
Okay. So I believe that takes us down to looking at some discussion items. Have I missed anything along the way?
I don't think so, Dr. Julia.
And
Okay.
Kathy, your presentation is still shared. I was just letting you know.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
The first item is one that I'm kind of chagrined to say that I really haven't tackled it. I've thought about it oodles of times over this strange set of days where we've experienced 5 months of kind of not being in the groove. Science and social studies assessments is something I will put on the top of my agenda to make sure that we get suggestions out as soon as we can. Visual and performing arts resources. Kathy, what do you have on this?
Well, I had reached out to April, and is April still on the call? I'm going to have to follow up on that. Both of the social emotional and the GT resources, I think we were talking about how we wanted to, I don't know how to get rid of that. Is there a whiteboard screen? Are y'all looking at that?
That's what's on mine too.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm going to get rid of that. Anyway, back to your question. So I think the question about the fine arts was, how do y'all want that displayed? And that was what had come up, I think, the last time I remember looking at the meeting notes. Is that what it said in the meeting notes?
I think that is the case. And because visual and performing arts have changed in our lives completely. Any everything that we currently would have experienced in person is all virtual today, which does change the opportunities as they were gathered and listed.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, good.
Hey.
Hi, you're speaking my language. Sorry, I was late for the meeting. I apologize, but in our new virtual world, I was teaching my class for the first time this semester, and that just finished, so I thought I'd join late, so I apologize for being late.
Well, I would say your entrances couldn't be better as we're talking about the visual and performing arts.
That's what I understand. I saw heard visual performing arts, and so okay.
Well,
what's going on?
We were looking at the resources, and Kathy was asking the question as to, well, Kathy, you do it. I don't need to paraphrase you.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Roberts. You're fine.
I think
trying
we're
to take notes while we talk at the same time. It's kind of hard.
I think that what we're looking at is that all of the opportunities that were put together aren't current opportunities, and so what is appropriate from that listing in order to share with our greater public?
That's a great question, and that's something that we're struggling with, because right now theaters and performing arts groups are not meeting. I mean, they're not having performances, and the artists are, a lot of them are not working at the moment. So most of those resources are not being used, though there are some things, that some community arts organizations have been doing things virtually. I know here in town in Lexington, our Lexington Children's Theater did some virtual drama camps over the summer for kids, and they would do Zoom meets to try to, and do some things that way. But they're all still trying to figure it out. So I'm not really sure how many of those resources, without going to each one individually and finding out, their individual websites, finding out what they're doing right now in this new world, whether or not they're even going to be valid resources at this point.
I was so excited. Orchestra Kentucky was scheduled to play tomorrow night out at the Corvette Amphitheater. And of course, with the storm coming through, rain will keep us from being outside. And it's been postponed for another month. But it was so exciting to think there was a real performance to which I could go.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. That was wonderful. We've had a couple of performances here and there in town, but most of them have been virtual performances, nothing really live. I know one of our local dance studios just did a big recital at the Opera House downtown, but they had to do the choreography where the kids were spaced at least 6 feet apart during the choreography. And then in between each performance, what they would do is they would completely sanitize the stage. So
it's a different world, and all of us will be eager for the vaccine to get us back to what used to be normal.
Absolutely.
Well, Kathy, I think what we will say about the visual and performing arts brochure is that until someone goes through it individually, it really shouldn't be released until we have more information about what's available in the arts.
That's probably a good suggestion. I know we've been through it and we've looked at it. I think there was maybe some questions about the format because of the way it was formatted with, there were a lot of lines and just making sure all the links work. We did that a couple of years ago when we first started on it. So we may have to just table that for now. Would there be any discussion of maybe having some resources during the pandemic from the advisory council?
I think that probably is a good idea. What do the rest of you think?
Well, what type of resources do you have in mind?
Well, honestly, I think the best resources, I think if we can come up with a list of resources of what teachers can do virtually to assure that differentiation is taking place, and that the students who are gifted are having their needs met virtually. And I think a lot of that has to do with differentiation.
And could that be especially focused on the arts?
Well, we're still trying to figure out how arts classes are even going to work right now. I mean, I know my class that I just met, we're meeting as a class for a couple of times, and then I'm doing individual lessons with my piano students because that's the best way to meet them. Because meeting as a group is not going to be conducive. And I know our vocal teacher may be meeting occasionally with kids all together, but when you're looking at different bandwidths at different houses, trying to do ensemble rehearsals and those sorts of things are a little bit more difficult. So a lot of the arts teachers that I know of, especially the ones here at SCAPA, are looking at ways to do more individualized instruction, which is a great way to differentiate. So using the time to do some differentiation that way.
Of course.
I guess that makes me think, Carla, about ways that you use virtual platforms to provide lessons.
Right.
And some tips and tricks for how to do that, because it's one thing to give lessons face to face. It's another thing to do it virtually.
Big time.
Just because of the lag.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure other things. I never have tried to give lessons virtually, but I can imagine it would be different.
It is, but I did it in the spring with my kids, and it was actually rewarding. I got to, instead of having them all in class together, I was able to really do some one-on-one connecting that I had not really been able to do in a large class of kids. So there are some technological difficulties that you just got to deal with, but it's actually not bad doing one-on-one, because then you've just got two people's bandwidths, yours and that person's. When you try to have like a group rehearsal with 40 people and they're all on the same call at the same time, and that gets really tricky.
Yeah.
Some school districts are allowing their students to meet together in small groups. I know at Lafayette High School here in town, the high school band is actually getting together, but they're doing small groups of kids in the evenings, and they've been given permission by the district to do that with social distancing and masks as needed. They're allowed to do that. Our drama production, we're actually going to have a drama production with a series of little one-act or single performer vignettes, and they're going to put all that together as a performance. So they're getting creative on how they're doing things. And like I said, we're just figuring this out as we go.
Right. And Emily, I know you come from an arts background too. I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if you and Carla or anybody else would like to, maybe we could form a small committee, and maybe we could come up with just maybe a short fact sheet of resources that could maybe go up through the office fairly quickly, that we could share here in the next couple of weeks as people are getting started, and then maybe even at some point do a short webinar or something that maybe expound a little further on some of the things that we might offer. I'm just throwing that out there. What do y'all think?
Yes, I think can you hear me? That's a good
Yes.
idea. I just wondered if she can make her lessons available statewide or to other districts, or if that is even allowed.
Are you asking Carla that?
Yes, I mean, and you too. Would that be something? I mean, I think that's a great idea to make available to a lot of children all over the state. I mean, I don't know what the legalities are with her, since she's employed by Fayette County.
Yeah, each county is going to be different as to what they're allowing and not allowing their kids to be able to do. And I know there's a lot of discussion right now through KHSAA about sports. I think the school board's taking that up either tomorrow or early next week. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, that's a big hot topic right now. The
Yes.
commissioner came on a few minutes, well, at the beginning of the hour, top of the hour, whatever, and said, he wouldn't be able to join us. He didn't think, because it's such a hot topic, Carla.
And I mean, I know that's with sports, but I mean, you're looking at the same thing with arts groups getting together.
Well,
it's the same thing.
Doing piano lessons sounds pretty. I think that sounds kind of phenomenal, though, especially with beginning students that might be interested in piano.
Yeah. I have 2 beginners in my class this year.
So how is it working?
We just had our first meeting today. We haven't really started on that yet. Today we're just kind of saying hi and navigating Canvas.
So I mean, what I'm asking though, I think that would be possible for Cage or the gifted to possibly make that available to other students across the state. If let's say they didn't have a person that was able to teach piano in their district. I mean, most music teachers can do piano. I understand that, but I'm sure in a lot of areas they probably don't have someone's that able to teach piano. I think.
Well, you're looking at who and how and
yeah. Well, I just asking
kind of stuff.
Kathy and asking anyone else, did they see that as a possibility?
Well, I guess it's kind of fraught with lots of different things. I'm thinking, Miss Mackey, I'm thinking about if I'm a parent, do I want my little one on the computer or some virtual platform with somebody I don't know or someone who hadn't been vetted? I'm thinking about privacy and security for students. I guess that's the first thing that pops up in my mind.
Yeah, but if it's a school teacher from Fayette County, I think.
Diane, I don't have time. Don't move me into that.
Yeah, I don't have time either. But
there's no way.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, Miss Mackey. That's something to think about. I put it in the notes.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Kathy, I'd be interested
Yes.
to hear the response from Emily. You were asking Emily about the potential resources that could be provided and her expertise. So, Emily, would you be able to address that?
I would definitely be interested in helping with that, working with people to gather up some resources for our EPA kids. I think that would be something definitely to look at. Something
Okay.
hard for us to do,
So, Dr. Roberts, would that be okay with you if we formed a small committee, me and Emily and Carla, if she's got time?
I think it would be a wonderful thing for the 3 of you to do if you are willing to do it. And I think you're all 3 so talented and knowledgeable in the arts that you probably could do that pretty quickly from things that you've heard about, you're doing, that you wish you could do. So I certainly would vote for your trio to work on this project and Then you share it on up the line, Kathy.
All right.
And then I'm going to switch the conversation to looking at the report from the from the Education Trust. As we are in the pandemic, we also are in the midst of much conversation about underrepresentation in programming for gifted kids, as well as for opportunities for advanced learning. Early in the pandemic, I had the opportunity to write a blog, and in that blog looked at 4 gaps. The first one being the belief gap, and these are all gaps that lead to underrepresentation. That if teachers don't believe that children from poverty, children who are Black and brown, children who have a disability and are also gifted, if teachers don't believe it, they'll never provide the opportunities for them to think and work at high levels. The second gap being the opportunity gap. And the report we're talking about is a lot about the opportunity gap. If you don't have the opportunity to do things, then you probably don't have the opportunity to work at high levels. The third gap is the achievement gap, and that's the one that we have heard the most about over the last decade, really longer than a decade. And that is those same children not reaching grade level learning. And frankly, grade level learning is only a goal for a child who is not there yet. It is no goal at all for a child who already scores at proficient or grade level or beyond. And finally, the excellence gap, and that's what Jonathan Plucker has coined and that he'll talk about on Saturday. And that is looking at these same children not scoring at advanced levels. So looking at gaps, and several of those gaps are included in the inequities in advanced coursework, what's driving them and what leaders can do. And I think it's certainly our time, way past our time, to take a leadership role in getting the word out on the gaps and the inequities. You've read the report. What thoughts do you have after reading it? So if I am to kind of do an overview of the findings of the report, the first finding, of course, is that Black and Hispanic children do well in advanced coursework when given the opportunity. And so that all kind of relates back to the opportunity gap. The second finding is that while it is clear that Black and Latino students are often successful in advanced coursework opportunities, they are still not fairly represented in advanced courses. 3, nationally, inequities are largely due to 1, schools that serve mostly Black and Latino students not enrolling as many students in advanced classes as schools that serve fewer Black and Latino students. Not as many opportunities. 2, schools, especially racially diverse schools, denying Black and Latino students access to these courses. Is that true in your district?
So Claude has his hand raised. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anyone.
Oh, I think I'd like to hear from Claude.
Oh, maybe you can hear from my wife instead.
Great.
Okay, so several things. First, Dr. Roberts, let me just say I really appreciate you bringing this up. I'm actually part of the inaugural cohort of the Ed Trust Family Fellows. So I've been working with Ed Trust for a few years now, and we did a lot of work on this. And speaking as a parents of 3 kids who have gone through GT, all of them who are taking AP classes, it was not abnormal for them to be the only little dot in the room. Almost every AP class they had, they were it. Our 15-year-old is in AP world now. It's virtual, so I'm not sure who else is in there, but my gut would say that it's probably similar to the usual. One thing about that study and about that report was this is a trend that we know is across the country. And I think we determined, at least locally, working with Pritchard, that a lot of that has to do with the belief gap, actually more than the excellence gap or the opportunity gap. Because when we look at PTP, K3 is when that starts to go downhill. They may be going through PTP, but they don't get invited to Quest. They don't get the application for Quest. And by the time they hit middle school, they're in gen ed classes. And if they were identified, if those little brown boys who were a little anxious and a little hyperactive had maybe been given some advanced math class as opposed to stuck in safe, would they end up in an AP class? So I think what this report does is it gives us a call to action. And as a state and district PTA representative, I have to tell you that this is on my list to try and do that, because we have got to figure out how and why to get rid of some of those implicit biases that I know are in play in identifying these kids.
It's a huge problem.
What I was going to say, this all could link back to what is reported in primary talent pool that we talked about earlier. If we have these students in primary talent pool and they do not transfer then to fully identified in 4th grade, we really have no way of showing the data to support that. And if we begin to record the data of the primary talent pool, who's identified, who's selected, what areas, this may help us show an area of intense work that we need to do. We can't wait until middle school and high school to show up for these kids. We've got to do it back at the primary talent pool.
Well, let me sidestep for a minute and tell you of a small grant that I have just received, very small, but it will allow us to do a cohort of middle school principals to look at issues such as this. I believe firmly that, like you're saying, Lynette, that it's got to be elementary and middle if you're ever going to have the opportunities in high school to do the kinds of things that require advanced learners. And so you'll each be hearing a little bit from me as I get the pieces together for doing this. And all of the schools that these principals will represent must have at least half of the students eligible for free and reduced lunch, which I think isn't at all hard to find schools that are like that, and that half of the principals will need to be Black or brown. So some of you, just knowing that I'm going to be working on this, could communicate with me if you have some ideas for this. Okay, so thank you so much for giving some inside information from the Education Trust. I've had this report and I've used it in lots of settings, but I don't seem to see much traction with what do we do next in order to address this. The primary talent pool way back when it was established was to look at 25% of the children in K1, 2, 3 and give them lots of experiences that would help them qualify as gifted. I hope I'm wrong, but I see most primary talent pool programs that I hear about being pretty much in name only. Does that resonate with anyone? And if someone's got a really good talent pool program, please tell me about it. I'm often asked, where do I go see one? I'd love to know where it is so that we could do that. I did have a school once upon a time where I knew it was best practice, but I don't even have that anymore. So do you have any ideas for what we could do to get a stronger message out that there are inequities in advanced courses and how we prepare kids so they can be successful in those opportunities? And I guess my next question, if not you, then who? Where do we go to tackle this problem? Kathy, I know that special considerations is something that you talk with lots of people about, how that works. Isn't that correct?
Yes. I think some people are, what the word is, afraid to use special considerations because to them it seems kind of nebulous, that there doesn't seem to be a specific number attached to special considerations. They want a number like 8 stay 9 or 7 stay 9. And I try to talk them about that. That's why it's so important to have a gifted and talented committee at each school, so that when the committee comes together and you're looking at your data and you're talking about children, that these children will surface. They'll bubble to the top as you talk about children in your school building. But they won't bubble unless, of course, there's some professional development or some training. So I think it's kind of two parts. There has to be some training at the school level, not just from me. And so maybe that's something that I need to offer, is kind of a trainer that train the trainer model there, where I have a presentation that I could offer to school districts that they could then train the personnel in their buildings about what to look for when you're talking about students who come from underrepresented populations. And then 2, once people understand what they're looking for, then they might be more willing to refer students. I think right now that's one of the problems is people don't refer because they're not sure how to refer, and they're afraid to refer without some sort of a data point in front of them.
And I think there's still quite a bit of emphasis on meeting grade level achievement and being satisfied with that. I'm working on a piece I'm writing, and I found a quote yesterday that I absolutely loved. It's Carol Tomlinson. There's no finish line to learning. Well, how do you get teachers to do that? I had the opportunity to meet virtually the new commissioner. And he's very interested in underrepresentation in gifted programming. That will be something that we hear about right away. It was a Pritchard committee reception, and I didn't ask the gifted questions. I didn't ask any questions, but someone did, and he responded to them. And I know that that's one of the things that he will be responding to in the future.
Right. Then it also goes to local norms as well. You know, as you look at our data, or I look at our data from the summative evaluation, that was one of the questions was, is your district using local norms? And it looks like about maybe 20 to 30%. And if anybody wanted, you know, a data point, that would be a really good way to do it. But I think people are afraid then about reciprocity. So you identify somebody using the local norms at your school, and then they move to another school district, you know, then what? And, you know, our guidance has been, well, rather than retest a student, you know, you might have to tweak the services for the child, you know, where they had been maybe in a pull-out session before, maybe now their needs can be met in differentiation in the regular classroom. If you have a teacher that's trained to differentiate for students. I think it's important that people know that, you know, that bright students, they may not have all of the resources, or may not be quite the same as your typical student, but they're still really bright, and they need those opportunities to advance through, you know, rigorous coursework. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm sorry.
Well, no. And then some of it goes back to the belief gap, and that you don't believe that a child from a low-income family, or a child who, and you fill in the blanks. And I think probably underrepresentation needs to be a topic for our next advisory board meeting, so that we can look at what are some steps we can recommend. I suppose
that April Wells in her fall workshop will address some of these issues. And she does have a book that if you were interested in, I think you would find helpful, and that's Achieving Equity in Gifted Programming. So the session with April on September 15th, we're going to record, and we would have it available to other sources afterwards if they were interested in exploring what April has to say. So she should address some of those issues.
Any other comments
And
on this?
just to include some reference to some information in the chat, Joe Percival said error ring on the side of inclusion will help with historically underserved populations. And then Claude also made reference to during this pandemic time, many decisions and changes have been made, and it's somewhat difficult to understand why certain programs are offered and why some are not. But he just wanted to point out that there was a decision to not offer choir, and that affected his family because his daughter is a choir director and is still having choir and lessons virtually. And so I don't know if you all wanted to talk about any of the, you know, decision making that we have related to pandemic. And I guess it goes back kind of to the consistent resources and communication, but just wanted to make sure you were aware of those two comments, Dr. Roberts.
And thank you. I was not aware of them, and so appreciated. I think sometimes in response to Joe's suggestion, taking a chance was probably well worth it. Sometimes people just need to know it's okay to do that.
But I hate having to constantly remind them that it's okay to do.
And I think lots of resources for the arts have been used in different ways just to address basic teaching needs, whether those are right teaching choices or not. That's up to you. But with grandchildren who are especially interested in the arts, taking that out of what you're doing makes schooling less interesting than it would be. No, we need to be thinking about all of these points.
Yep. And Claude, I know I keep referring to you, but does the Christian family have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was just wanted to clarify. It wasn't something that affected our family directly. I was actually responding to an earlier comment where someone said their high school is not offering choir, and how do you service students if the class isn't offered? So I was asking who made that decision to not offer choir, because I know my daughter, my youngest, who is in school, is in choir and in band, and they're having classes virtually. And one of my older daughters is a choir director in Bardstown, and she's still having her choral classes and having rehearsals virtually. So the question is not so much why they're not how they're getting the services, but who made the decision to not even attempt the services.
Could I jump in there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
That is my district. I assumed it was Kentucky-wide. I first assumed that, but I guess it's our district. We are not offering choir this year, and it's really creating a problem for us for our GT kids. We have band, but the band is being offered after school. I don't know how to service my choir kids, because right now we've limited to 3 classes is what they're taking online. So it's like a math, a reading, and a science. There's no music in that. So I'm not really sure what I need to do to service them. And then next semester they'll have 3 new classes, but choir music is not one of them.
There are ways some of that can be addressed, and I'm sure Carla might have some ideas as well. But if you want to share your email with me, I can probably give you some other information, because there are some ways not only SBDM but PTA can address that as well, because that is some of those curricular decisions come from the parents and not just the school. And we've watched several decisions be made over these past few weeks with the pandemic that were in some cases detrimental to students. And the ones we've been aware of, we have honestly spoken out on and been relatively successful in having those, not so much having decisions reversed, but having them thought through for more than just an administrative standpoint and what's actually affecting the kids. So we'd be more than willing to try to work with you on that if you want to share your email.
Thank you. I put it in the comments.
Okay. I've got, when you're at LaRue, so you can find me. I'm in the global. My name is Claude Christian. I'm at KDE, but I'm going to pass this on to my wife, who works with the state PTA as well as Lexington's Fayette County 16th District PTA, and is involved in a lot of other advocacy things that occasionally keep me slightly quiet because of state. But she has a lot more information that would be more than willing to share with you and help you in ways to address that.
Thanks for that, Claude. And Joe, you had your hand up. Did you have a question or comment?
Strong. What was it? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, my computer's like super lagging, so I hit it and then it waits like 30 seconds or 10 seconds before I come up. I just was going to throw out, going back to the discussion about PTP and the underserved populations, and I know Lynette and I know you, Dr. Roberts, have been fighting for this literally every single year, but I just come back to the whole concept of funding. And I know, like in our district, like I think that Oldham County, like you guys have known me long enough to know that like I will tout the things that we do in our district. It's a priority in our district. We have gifted coordinators at every middle school. We have now this year we have 1, 2, 3, I believe 5 district staff who their whole job is GT. And so we're very different than most districts with regard to the concentration that we put on GT kids, and some of that is because of the population that we have in our district. But I think that when you come back to funding and you start looking at the fact that some districts that when we talk about that PTP is where it breaks down for kids that don't, like I think Lynette was saying earlier, if we don't get them going on that trajectory, then we create a trajectory that basically says you're going to be an average kid or worse. And so like that PTP is so important to show kids what possibilities there are and how you can, kids a lot of times when they're put with other kids that are high achievers, they continue to achieve even higher, because they push each other. And so, I just, I don't want to say it's a situation that can't be solved because it can, but I just know that, it's so difficult without funding to create those positions when, you know, I don't know, like I just find it very, very, very difficult for, like, districts have to prioritize it, and without it being a priority, the money is just not sitting there just going, oh, well, of course we have a PTP coordinator. You know, I'm even in our district, like, I'm the GT coordinator for our high school, and I'm an associate principal. Like, I have discipline, I have other things. Like, it would be great if we had someone in our school who was just dedicated to, you know, to GT in our high school. But we don't even have that. And so it's just really, really difficult, I think, without funding to expect districts, or you know, you really have to push on districts to see the importance of of staffing a full-time PTP spot. And then once you have that, then you can educate them about local norms and how you be inclusive about you know, underserved populations. But I think, like, the first hurdle is just even having true PTP programs at, you know, if Dr. Roberts can't throw a dart at a map of Kentucky and find a PTP program to come look at as a, you know, like, for her to say, well, where's a good PTP program? Like, that's a sad statement, like, that we can't just throw a dart at a county in Kentucky and find a good PTP program. And that, like, talks about why those kids, by the time they get to GT, we've already lost so many of them because they've never been pushed. So anyway, you can record that and send it on to the legislature and tell them we need some more money. And, you know, maybe we could use a little bit more than what they gave us in 1990.
And that's where it still is.
I know.
Well, there probably are good PTP programs, and I simply don't know about them. But
I'm sure there are some. You can come to ours. We have Shannon Jones who runs our PTP program, and she's awesome.
I'll come your way. I do think we are talking about some issues, though, that are incredibly important to the future of children. And when we talk about the future of children, we're talking about the future of our communities. So they're very important points for us to keep buoyant.
Yep. And districts are making some difficult decisions, and Carla has pointed out also how some school districts are not scheduling arts programs and just focusing on academics, which that is, you know, when you think about removing that opportunity for kids, that could be not a good decision. So thanks for pointing that out, Carla.
Yes, a very limiting decision.
All right. Dr. Roberts, I think we missed the science and social studies assessment discussion.
Well, I kind of apologized for that one at the end, that we really hadn't developed it. So we didn't miss it, except
gotcha.
It wasn't there.
So we just need to table that for next time then.
And we'll talk about the next time, and we will have together any suggestions you all have for ways to assess science and social studies, plus anything else I can glean from KDE or elsewhere.
I think from just the data I collected this summer, there seems to be people who were using the K-Prep and can no longer use it. And so now we're looking for a different assessment.
Yes.
Also, this year is just going to be a novel year for assessment period because of people not finishing assessment last spring, of course, and then just trying to figure out what they're going to do, you know, this year with remote instruction.
Yes.
And, you know, people are going to have to think about scheduling children to come in, collecting those other evidences online through digital means. And so if you don't have a social studies and science assessment already, you know, that kind of puts you behind. You know, a lot of people use the Iowa. Some people use the Stanford 10. I mean, there are people that are using different assessments, but I think that's one of the biggest things is that they had relied on the K-Prep for a long time, and now they don't have that. And I don't think they really understand that they're out of compliance too.
Yep.
I think that's an issue too, that they think, well, if I'm doing some of them, I'm okay. Well, that's a good thing, but you're really out of compliance if you're not, screening and then identifying in all those areas.
You're right. Well, I think we have come to the end of our agenda. Does anyone have final comments they want to make?
Well, I have a consideration for a future meeting. How is federal monies from Titles 2, 3, and 4 possibly used in GT programming in Kentucky? It's a possibility, but I don't know how much people know about it and how it could be used. Could that be a possible topic for a future meeting?
It could. And I saw Kathy making that note.
Good.
Other suggestions for the November agenda? Well,
Dr. Roberts, I just want to mention that we do have an exit slip. Again, it's a Google form, and I will.
Joe, we lost you.
Part of that.
Sorry about that. I put the exit slip link in the chat. And so we need to hear your feedback. We know that our time here is limited. And so there may have been ideas or suggestions that you would like to pass along. Just please put that information in the exit slip. I will also send an email out to the members to complete that also. And we're able to evaluate and review that feedback. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. A motion to adjourn?
I so move.
And a second? I look forward to seeing you all in November. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you.
Come Cage.
Yeah, come Saturday. We'd love to have
Saturday.
you.
Come September 15th.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Have a great day.